Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. Aquí tienen el horario para hoy, miércoles, el 19 de octubre. Due at the end of last class was the film activity that went along with Coco. So if you've not submitted that, please do so at your earliest opportunity. Two assignments that are due for next class. We're going to start Chapter 1B today on extracurricular activities, things that you do after school and at school. And that's Chapter 1B, so you have some Quizlet practice for that, and then a few pages out of the workbook, and we're going to go over all of these together in this video. Your daily objective is to talk about what you typically do after school as it associates with school in terms of extracurricular activities. Warm-up question for today, directly aligning with that objective. ¿Qué haces después de las clases? So for today's warm-up, write two activities that you typically do after school, and those verbs that you're using should be conjugated in the yo form. So for example, después de las clases, yo veo la televisión y paso tiempo con mis amigos. You can see I've conjugated the verb ver in the yo form, and pasar, which is to spend or hang out. Paso tiempo con mis amigos. So two activities that you typically partake in the yo form: jugar videojuegos, comer, caminar a casa, correr, tocar música, hablar con amigos, etc. And then ask that question to two classmates, and for each classmate, write down one activity that they typically do after school in the él/ella form. So for example, por ejemplo, después de las clases, Sebastián toca la guitarra y va al cine. Tocar, the verb to play music. Ir is the verb to go, and it's actually a verb that we're going to be looking at today that you'll use a lot in Chapter 1B, and there you have the conjugations of the verb ir. We looked at ir already this year, but there you have the conjugations, and in the él/ella form it would be va, when you're talking about people in the third person. So that's your warm-up for today. And then after we knock that out, we'll go over the review vocabulary on page 42 of the textbook. This is vocabulary from last year as it relates to places. Los lugares are places that we frequent after school. Deportes, sports that we partake in, either extracurricular or in our leisure time. And then las actividades are just general leisure activities, right? You can see all of these are verbs, A-R-E-R and I-R verbs. A lot of them are cognates, words that look like, sound like, and have the same meaning as another word in another language. And for any vocabulary you're not familiar with, we're going to do Quizlet practice to jog your memory. So taking a look at page 42, review those places and activities to incorporate that in talking about what it is that you like to do after school and the places that you like to go. And then we're going to review, let me go back to the calendar here. And then we'll go ahead and complete that Quizlet practice. So let's go ahead and look at that. All right, so for the Quizlet practice, you're going to click here to access the link in Quizlet. If you have an account, sign in. If not, I would suggest creating an account. We're going to be using Quizlet a lot as we get into the new material beginning this quarter. So clicking on that link, it'll take you to the Chapter 1B repaso, the places that we were just looking at. And there are a variety of activities for you to choose from. And the three that I would like you to complete, as this is an assignment, is the flashcards, learn, and write practice activities. You know what, matter of fact, I think I'm going to change that because many of you talk about the writing taking a long time, very tedious. So we'll do, why don't we do the test? Either test or match. Let's do match. I want to make it less time intensive for you. Flashcards, learn, and match practice activities. Change that in real time here. So for the flashcards, it's pretty basic, right? I mean, all you're doing is having to go through each flashcard and kind of, you can change and do the images. But you're going through, there you are, clicking back and forth, going through each. And then when you get to the very end, and I know you guys can skip all the way through, but just take your time, take a few sentences. A lot of them are cognates. But once you get to the very end, which is the 41st slide, go ahead and take a screenshot of that to demonstrate that you've completed that. You're going to do a screenshot for each of these three activities. The learn activity, and it's going to ask me to sign in. But after you sign in, you'll complete the learn activity, and then again, just to clarify, not the right activity, but instead the match, where you're just matching different tiles of vocabulary together. So complete those three activities, take a screenshot, or if you're using the laptop, you can just take a selfie of you and the activity. Make sure the images are legible so I can see that you've completed them, and then you're going to upload each of those three images to this assignment in Canvas. Then we'll take a look at page 43, the very next page, and go over the verb ir, which is the verb to go. So why don't we do that while we're together here. Ir means to go. We use it obviously to indicate places that we are going to. And there you have the conjugations in the present tense. Voy, vas, va, vamos. Let's go, vamos, and van. Voy, vas, va, vamos, van is the present tense. I go, you go, he or she goes, we go, and they go. Ir is used to indicate where we're going, talking about, things we do after school, places we go to. Ir is also used in this construction to express the simple future, to indicate where we are going to go and what we are going to do in the future. Simple future is what it's referred to. It's very simple for that reason. Three parts to it. The verb ir, conjugated according to who it is you're talking about. A, the preposition a, which just translates to. Ir, a, and then the infinitive. The infinitive, as you remember from quarter one, is the verb in its basic unconjugated form. And it's the activity that you are going to do, right? We do the same thing in English. I am going to hang out at Starbucks with a friend. We are going to study for our chemistry test, right? We do it in English. In Spanish, it's the same construction. Take a look at this example. Vamos a hablar por teléfono después de las clases. we are going to talk on the phone after school. So that is the simple future, which uses the verb ir. Instead of doing these practice exercises, the last thing I'm going to have us do is the core workbook pages 16 and 17 and guided workbook page 33. So let's take a look at that together and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. A ver, próxima actividad. Aquí tienen las páginas del libro de ejercicios. Y... no, utilizamos eso. So here's the assignment in Canvas, which you guys can annotate the workbook pages. You don't need to have them physically. Although if you prefer to print them out and fill them out, you're welcome to. But you can annotate this PDF or complete the exercise in your notebooks, take a clear picture, and submit. If you do by chance have a workbook, you can certainly use that as well, but the workbook is not, the physical workbook is not required for this. You have electronic access there. So let's take a look at these pages, starting off with core workbook pages 16 and 17. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Add the missing infinitives. Remember, the infinitive is the verb in its basic unconjugated form to tell what these people are going to do after school and where they need to go to do that. So you're going to use the notes on page 42 to complete this. You're going to use the infinitives, right? The activities and the sports. Infinitives ending in AR, ER, or IR. And then you're going to use these locations and match them up, right? Obviously, there are logical associations between the location and the activities that we would associate with them. So back to page 42, or excuse me, page 16. For example, yo quiero leer en un libro en la biblioteca. I want to read, leer, un libro en la biblioteca, in the library. Let's knock out the first couple together. Mis amigos quieren, if you're wondering what quiero and quieren and quiere mean, these are the conjugations of the verb querer, which is to want. Yo quiero would be I want. Mis amigos quieren, and then this activity, again, page 42 in the textbook, this would be jugar, baseball, practicar, baseball. A couple infinitives you could use there, right? Jugar al béisbol, practicar al béisbol. En el parque. Practicar or jugar would be your infinitive. Parque would be your location. Pretty straightforward and very easy to do if you have page 42 handy. All right, number 2, Teresa quiere usar la computadora en casa. So knock out those. Infinitive is the verb in its basic form, and then the location is what goes in the second blank. For page 17, it's using the verb ir, and the conjugations you have on page 43 of the textbook we went over earlier, and you have them in your notes as well. So just fill in the blank with the correct form of ir according to your subject, and your subject is always going to come more often than not at the beginning of your sentence. We'll do the first couple together. Mis padres is plural. We're talking about my parents. We're going to use the ellos form, and that would be van. Ellos van a la iglesia. Yo voy a casa. Very straightforward. The only ones that are tricky would be maybe number 3 and 5. If your subject is plural, then you're going to use either vamos or van, right, which is the plural form of ir. If your subject is singular, like 5 and 6, for example, well, then you're going to use voi, vas, or va, right? Because those are the singular conjugations of the verb ir. So when you're not quite sure when the subject pronoun isn't provided, just think to yourself, is the subject singular or plural? And then determine if it's first, second, or third person. Talking about you, talking to someone, or talking about someone or a group of people. All right, so that's page 17, the top part of page 17. The bottom part of page 17 is asking you to write complete sentences to answer these questions about what these people are going to do. So, ¿qué van a hacer ustedes después de las clases? What are you going to do? What are you guys going to do after class? This looks like to work, which is the verb trabajar on page 42. Right there, trabajar, the verb to work. So because the question's in the to form, because the question is in the ustedes form, you're going to respond in the nosotros form. The question's in the ustedes form, asking you, plural, you all, what you're going to do after school. So your response, naturally, should be in the nosotros form, to say we are, right? ¿Qué van a hacer ustedes después de las clases? What are y'all doing after school? We are going to work. Nosotros vamos a, and then your infinitive we identified as the verb to work, trabajar. So, nosotros vamos a trabajar. And then if you want to, you could add después de las clases. You could add that at the very end, or you could put that at the very beginning. Ir a infinitive. This is the simple future. Ir, van, in the ustedes form. A, the preposition to. And then the infinitive here is hacer, because it's asking what are you going to do, right? But you're not going to use hacer in your response. You're going to replace hacer with whatever infinitive that's in the picture. And in this case, it would be the verb trabajar. Sorry if I'm spelling that out too explicitly, but just want to make sure you guys got that point. So we're using this construction in our responses there for part B. Let's do one more together. ¿Qué vas a hacer este fin de semana? It's asking, what are you going to do this weekend? That would be jugar golf or practicar golf. This question's asking you in the to form, so you're going to respond in the yo form. And going back to page 43 to see, that would be yo voy, be the verb ir in the yo form. A, and then back to page 42 for playing golf, jugar golf or practicar golf. Yo voy a jugar golf este fin de semana. One thing, though, that I know some of you probably are wondering is this verb, right? Like the verb jugar golf or the verb trabajar. Do I need to conjugate that? Like for number one, how come we didn't conjugate trabajar in the nosotros form? For number two, how come we don't conjugate jugar or practicar in the yo form? For number three, ¿qué van a hacer tus amigos? How come this verb correr, how come we don't conjugate that in the ellos, ellas form, talking about my friends? Well, it's because anytime we have two verbs together in Spanish, in any language really, English included, the first verb gets conjugated, right? In this case, the verb to go, and the second verb is left in the infinitive. You know, in English, you would say, I'm going to, I play golf. Or you wouldn't conjugate both verbs. You would say, I'm going to play golf, right? To play is the infinitive in English. In Spanish, it would be just jugar, not conjugated. So that's why we're leaving it in the infinitive in this construction. First verb is conjugated, in this case the verb ir. The second verb is not conjugated. We did the same thing, if you'll indulge me for just a moment. At this point, probably few of you are even listening, but for those of you that are hanging on, this is for you. We did this before when we were using the verb querer. Querer is the verb to want, right? We conjugated querer according to our subject, right? The second verb is left in the infinitive for the reason that I just mentioned. Two verbs together, conjugate the first, leave the second in the infinitive. All right, enough geeking out on grammar. You guys got pages 16 and 17, 33 rather. The guided side, very straightforward. You're provided with the conjugations of the verb ir, and you're choosing the conjugation that best fits according to the subject that's provided. In number 2 and 5, since these are questions, in Spanish, the syntax changes a little bit, syntax being the order of all the words or the parts of speech. For numbers 2 and 5, since they're questions, your subject is going to come after the verb. So for number 2, your subject is tu. For number 5, your subject is la familia. Comes after in the form of a question. So just circle the correct form for part A, and for part B, you're using that construction ir, a, and the infinitive. So you're filling in that first blank with the correct form of ir, voy, vas, va, vamos, van. And then the second blank is just going to be the preposition a. That, muchachos, is your quote-unquote homework for today. That's the Quizlet practice that we went over earlier, and then also the workbook pages we just went over. Make sure to finish the film activity if you've not done so, and I will see you next time en clase. Hasta luego, muchachos.